Right, this is important. This is big, actually. We're talking about ME. It's long been dismissed by many people, disregarded, and certainly very little understood. Around 400,000 people in Britain have ME, myalgic encephalomyelitis, and profound exhaustion and pain. But until now, scientists knew next to zilch about this serious, complex, and debilitating chronic illness. So that's changed. That really has changed now. A new study from the University of Edinburgh, game changer, has found there were 8 signals in genetic code where people with ME tended to have a different gene variant compared with the healthy population. 400,000 people with ME in the country will have gone, I told you, So we want to hear from you. We want to hear from you if you have someone in your family. We've got the lead study of the author coming. Lead study of the author. I studied a few authors in my time. Lead author of the study coming up. 08085 909 693 85058. What's it been like for you to get the diagnosis? What difference will it make? Let's hear from you. What does the research mean to you? Does it give you hope? What has it been like? What is it like? Get in touch. ME and you.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Call free 08085 909 693. Text 85058. Text will be charged at your standard message rate. Message on WhatsApp 08085 909 693. Visit bbc.co.uk/5live terms for our terms of use and privacy notice.
Really pleased to say we've got Kelsey in Manchester coming up in just a second who has ME. And hi, Kelsey. And we're right, Professor Chris Ponting. From Edinburgh University, my hometown, a university behind the study. This is actually really significant. Chris, tell us more.
Thank you very much, Nicky. So we have found 8 places in our DNA that people with ME tend to have more of one DNA variant than the general population at large. And what this means is that for the first time, we have robust genetic evidence that there is a predisposition to ME that is written into our DNA. And you said earlier in the program that people have felt dismissed, their symptoms ignored for so many years. And this is a study that has been, of its type, been done by others for so many diseases, and should have been done for 15 years or so years ago, but wasn't. I think because of stigma. And this is a disease that is highly stigmatized. It's highly biased towards women. And I think that plays a part in why there is almost no research being done on this highly debilitating and highly prevalent disease.
Wow, that's interesting and really rather saddening. So if it's a genetic marker, if it's in the DNA, it's been with us forever, right?
It's been inherited down the generations, for many generations indeed. What our study can't say is whether any individual from their DNA is going to get the disease or not. We're looking at population averages rather than understanding the genetics of individuals. That should change. If we were to receive millions more funding, then we would look into every single letter, 3 billion of them, in the genomes of people who've kindly donated their DNA. And we would be able to find discoveries, I think, that would be of relevance to individuals.
So people had it in 1925 and 1825 and 1725. What on earth did they think was wrong? Thinking about that. So how did it get a name? Was it in the 80s?
The myalgic encephalomyelitis as a name has been around for quite a long time. It was renamed by some as chronic fatigue syndrome, which rather belittles the condition, to be honest, because its main symptom isn't fatigue. We all feel fatigue at some point in our lives. Rather, it's something called post-exertional malaise, which is a kind of crash that if you exert yourself, it could be physical, it could be mental, you can perform in a good way, but 24 hours later, you will not be able to do all of that again because you will have crashed. That is post-exertional malaise. So it's been misunderstood, misnamed, and maligned often.
Yuppie flu, remember that awful moniker for it? Yeah.
And that is the idea that after infection, there is a high likelihood of people getting ME. It's over half of our participants report an infection just before. It's an awful phrase, yuppie flu. But in the DNA, we do see signs that people's immune system is involved in their predisposition to ME, just as we find that their DNA is telling us that they have experienced chronic pain because one of the genetic signal lies on top of a previously known signal for chronic pain. So it's fantastic to see the genetic results speaking back to us exactly what our DecodeME participants have been telling us for so long.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just reading here, there were in the 30s outbreaks of a mysterious polio-like illness with muscle fatigue, neurological symptoms, and prolonged recovery were recorded. So interestingly, that they did see that in a lot of people there was stuff that was wrong. What does this mean? What will it lead to? Are we talking about a cure in years to come? It's
not the case that we've ever said that it would lead immediately to a cure or an improved diagnosis. Unfortunately, because it should have been done 15 years ago, we're 15 years too late in what we're doing. We now need to accelerate research, bring on board scientists from around the world who can use their previous expertise to understand what these genetic signals actually mean. To sort of, we know X marks the spot on our DNA, but we need people to go and do the digging to find out exactly where the treasure lies. So we need lots more funding around the world to be able to do the right science now that we know where to look.
Yes. Do you think there's still a bias of misogyny going on?
I do. I think it's very clear across many diseases that male-biased diseases are very well funded and female-biased diseases are not. And I would challenge those people who give out funding to demonstrate otherwise. I think this is an important aspect that needs a lot of discussion in our society.
Why is it female biased, this disease? Is that something to do with, I stray into areas I know nothing about, mitochondria?
Well, we all have mitochondria. We inherit them from our mothers. There could be a reason there. We have looked in our genetic study, we have used objective approaches to ask the question, why is it that women more often have ME? And we've drawn a blank on that one. We will continue to look. There are tests that we haven't yet used for this type of analysis. We haven't, in this study, answered every question that we have, but it does it forms the starting point to a whole bunch of new things that others and ourselves can do.
Why did you do the study?
I have a very good friend whose life was just destroyed by ME. We met at university. And when you know someone who has ME, all of the counter points about whether they're making it up, they just have an endless belief system that is out of kilter with reality. All of those things are just shown as what they are, which is false. And at some point in my research life, I thought I'd not be able to help my friend, Simon. But gradually I realized that perhaps I could try. And the saddest thing was realizing that there weren't people who were in this field wanting to do this type of study, and that I had to try and learn how to do these studies, which I've never done before, and bring on board many people as part of a larger team. This is a much.
How did you get funding? And I think that's
it took
so
years
moving. Did it?
To go to the funders and with the help of so many people to go to answer their questions, to put forward discussion documents, and I think we just wore them down ultimately to get this is the £3.2 million that was required. The role of the charities in this is enormous because they have represented their constituents exceptionally well. And together, as a co-production, we have done this study and we opened the doors for the funding in the first place.
So this is about your, as they say, lived experience, the lived experience of your friend Simon. That is incredible to hear. How did it affect Simon ME?
I always want people to speak of their own lives, but he's on record as saying how debilitating the illness has been for him, and how it destroyed his future, his hopes, his trust that life would bring him good things. From a day-to-day point of view, his life is very diminished compared to people who live a more normal life. I think I'll leave it there because I think people with ME need to tell their own story.
We'll do that. I take your point. But you were so moved by his experience. Here's what it has led to. Wow.
Yeah,
Kelsey.
and this is what science should be about. It should be trying to answer these questions that people are posing through their lived experience.
There's a thought. There is a thought. Hi, Kelsey. Wasn't that interesting?
Hi.
This is amazing, isn't it?
It is. I think, like as you said, it's not like immediate answers. It's not an immediate cure. But I think for the entire ME community and all of us around the world, it's validation and that little bit of hope, which goes such a huge way. I mean, even just that acknowledgement of the naming chronic fatigue syndrome. It's not our primary symptom. It's not just fatigue. And for example, we're banned from any sort of para-sport official competing. Not that many of us can, but those that could, because they say that it's a condition that primarily causes fatigue. And that's just such a simplification of what everyone goes through on a daily basis. And it seems to be the overarching consensus of, oh, yeah, you're just tired. So this really does take the steps forward to show that there is a lot more going on and a lot more that we should be doing to help sufferers.
Well, Chris is quite right to say he can't speak for Simon, but Kelsey, you can speak for Kelsey. So tell us what else is going on.
So I was ill. I think my first symptoms were very, very young, probably about 10, 11. It started showing up. I'd had a viral infection. I started getting unwell. I wasn't able to attend school. I struggled. I fought and fought. I was told that I was just being difficult, skiving off school and so on. Blamed myself. Social services got involved when I was about 14 because attendance was so low. They were worried. I was diagnosed with school phobia as a mental condition. That must be what's going on. It was really difficult as a child to advocate for yourself. You haven't got that knowledge that you can listen to your own body. You trust what the doctors and your parents are telling you. Then as I progressed, I was somewhat mild through my teens, just struggling with daily life, but not enough that it's visible enough. I believe in 2013, they thought potentially that I had chronic fatigue syndrome, but the specialist felt that my symptoms were not severe enough. I was then officially diagnosed about 4 years later in 2019 when I had followed their advice of just getting on with life, get out there, go to uni, which I did, and I got a part-time job and I ran myself into the ground. I started, of course, I had the post-exertional malaise as he's described, where, I'd go out to lectures one day and the next day I'm in bed for the full day. But I had IBS-type symptoms. I was struggling to walk. The more I was pushing myself, the more I was getting unwell. I was losing strength, losing balance, suffering from dizziness. Occasionally, I'd nearly black out on the way to lectures. It got worse and worse through that first year of uni. I had to quit my job. I went home dropping plates with a singular potato on it because my arms were finding that such hard work that I was unable to And when I returned to university in my second year, I was in a powered wheelchair. I'd lost so much strength, so much ability. My attendance was about 25%. I slept for 26 hours straight once, and that was kind of my teenage years, after which I was able to graduate just barely, and I was on full disability and housebound, and that was when I finally plateaued, because I stopped pushing my body too far and started resting. And I was lucky enough to be given an assistance dog to help with the things that I, at that point, was finding too hard to do, like taking my shoes and socks off, and helping me sit up in bed. And I was able to recover somewhat to where I'm now described as mild. I have a full-time job and I work, but compared to my colleagues, when I finish work, I rest. When I do something, such as I'm lucky enough now to be able to go for runs, stuff like that, the consequences are still there. They're not visible to my friends, my family, my colleagues, because I rest. I spend my time in bed. I struggle with migraines and other symptoms, flu-like symptoms.
What about diet?
Well.
I'm going to ask Chris another question in a second. Calls coming in, of course. Do you have to be careful about what you eat, what you consume?
To a point, yeah. I do my best just to have a healthy diet, because obviously it helps fuel you. But as a child, they trialed all sorts of things. Is it gluten? Is it too much sugar? Is it this? Is it that? I discovered I had an intolerance to onions, so that kind of helped improve overall. But realistically, during my worst years, I didn't have much choice over my diet. It was whatever I was able to feed myself, because I didn't have support, I didn't have help. So we're survivors. The sufferers, they're just surviving day to day. So whilst now I'm able to focus and make sure I have a healthy diet, I haven't found much improvement from a change in diet.
Chris, a question, because we did a phone in on it recently, which was bulging at the seams. Chris Ponting, Professor Chris Ponting, researcher from Edinburgh University behind the study. Might there be any link to long COVID, Chris? So
there is a genetic association to long COVID. So when we found our genetic associations, we of course cross-referenced them, and they weren't in the same place. So our data does not show any correspondence between ME and long COVID. Mm-hmm. But other researchers using genetics have indeed found some overlap in the genetics of ME and long COVID. And of course, we're giving our data to them so that they can research this further. And the symptoms are so similar. That is not a surprise. The post-exertional malaise that has just been discussed is also a feature for some people with long COVID. And it's not a surprise because of the idea that so many people with ME came down with ME after an infection. And of course, the COVID virus was one such. So I absolutely expect that when larger studies come along, there will be found a genetic overlap between the two conditions.
Mm. Hey, Molly in Chippenham and Darren in Teignmouth. Hello to both of you. Look forward to hearing your reactions to this study and talking to each other about your shared lived experiences. Hi, Darren. Hi, Molly. Molly, how are you feeling today with this news?
It's exciting news. But it feels like ME has been kind of disregarded for a long time. As you've said, people kind of don't really understand it and sort of think, I get tired as well. So they don't see that it's actually a real and debilitating disease. So having this data showing that there's this very concrete genetic evidence for ME is really exciting. But it is just the beginning, and it'll be really good to see this used in the future by other researchers. Hopefully they get funding.
You must have thought, hearing about this, you must have in a way thought, thank you, at last. Okay, nobody was doing all that ridiculous and awful and offensive yuppie flu stuff, but there was still a kind of question mark as to what this was all about. That's gone, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, a lot of the kind of sort of misunderstanding and sometimes even abuse comes from the general public, people that probably won't be reading this, the study. So,
but they're hearing this and they're seeing the news and they're all that,
Yeah. So hopefully people's kind of attitudes will start to change. And I think I've been very fortunate, but I know a lot of people who have had trouble with medical professionals who don't understand it or don't see it as a real illness. So hopefully there'll be kind of a bit of a change where that's concerned. People might kind of be able to get the support they need now.
How has it affected you?
So I've had ME for 12 years now. I was diagnosed when I was in my second year of university. I took a year out and then managed to go back and finish my course. It was difficult, but I made it through. But I, quite similar to one of your previous callers, I just kind of kept pushing myself. So I pushed myself to do a master's, and I just kind of ground myself into the dust, and I got to a point where I knew I just had to stop pushing because I was just making it worse. So now I have kind of reached a sort of relative stability. So I use an electric wheelchair to kind of get around and maintain my independence a little bit. But I have to rely a lot on my parents and my husband to kind of just help me function as a an adult in the world. But I'm not able to have a job at the moment, which is really difficult. I was always kind of like an overachiever growing up, so it's really hard to kind of have that transition into. I see all of my peers from university going on to do amazing things, and it's really hard.
Really hard. It must be. I'm going to ask, it's great to have you on, Molly, to talk about this, because it's about spreading the word, and there's a lot of word to spread today as well. Chris Ponting, there's a couple of questions coming in. Will this lead to a proper and definitive diagnosis? And another question from Jilly. I've been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which sounds identical. Is there a link? Professor Ponting.
Yes. Our results do not allow us to diagnose individuals today. I'm sorry to say that. A lot more research is needed by a lot of different types of scientists. And unfortunately, there aren't the funded projects that will allow that soon. Fibromyalgia is often diagnosed in people with ME and the other way around. So indeed, there are overlaps. There are also differences. And we will be doing studies of the similarities and differences of the genetics of ME and fibromyalgia going forward. So much more to be done for all the reasons that we are hearing about, especially about how people feel that so much loss in their lives because of this disease.
Yeah, Darren too. Sorry to keep you, Darren. Listening to Molly was just remarkable as well. What have you been through, Darren? Not sure if we've still got Darren. Can you hear me, Darren?
I can, Nicky. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's good. It's a bit of a dodgy line, so if it doesn't work out, I'll come back and we'll get a better one.
Okay, Nicky, thank you.
Carry on just now.
After the 13th of Barry do a feed injection.
No, sorry, Darren, I'm going to come back to you so we get some telephonic clarity, which we will do. Anna's with us as well. Anna Gregorovsky, chair of the British Association of Clinicians in ME. Hi, Anna.
Hello, Nicky. Hi. Hello.
It's big stuff, this, isn't it?
It is big stuff. It's very exciting. It's important research. As Chris said, it should have been done a long time ago, and it's great that Chris Ponting and his team have taken this forward. And it moves just that step closer to being able to diagnose ME/CFS the patients have been suffering for so long, and people living with this condition have been debilitated in terms of what they can do. They've had this disabling fatigue alongside the post-exertional malaise, which is the key feature, having that crash after trying to do activities. So we at the British Association of Clinicians in ME/CFS really welcome the findings from this research.
Do you remember back in the 80s, all that insulting stuff? Were you around? You're probably too young.
Yeah, so yes, I was around, but I was living in a different country. So I came to this country in the late 80s and started working in this field in the late 90s. So this has been the specialty that I've been involved with since 1998. But I do remember all of it's certainly the different names that were so unhelpful, and the way that the patient group had suffered, because obviously I researched into that when I began my current role, and it's just been so devastating that people have been left like this for so long.
I think we got Darren back. We'll give it another go, Darren.
Yeah, of course.
You have got me back, Nicky. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, good, yes. Telling me about your life.
Got ME 23 years ago. I was in my late 30s. I was very fit, very athletic, had a high-level career, and I had a yellow fever inoculation, which I had a very bad reaction to, which a few months later gave me very mild pneumonia. And from there on, it all went downhill. Very, very weak, very tired, had to take a couple of steps back in my career, couldn't go to the gym, was unable to walk upstairs in the house. Really very frightening for a very positive, laid-back person in his late 30s.
Yeah, and so what about now?
Now, after 23 years, I did a lot of self-research in the early days. The one thing which has helped me is hyperbaric oxygen treatment, which helped me have a career, although it was a couple of steps lower down. Now I'm just really mildly affected by ME as I've retired, but I do have the chronic pain.
Yeah, tell me about that chronic pain. It's always really difficult describing pain, but we all know what it is, and it comes in various degrees. What chronic pain is that? Is that kind of long-term ache, or is it intense? What is it?
It's very intense pain. If I go upstairs in the house, I have to stop a couple of times. It's like extreme flu. Although I am now on the cannabis medical trial, which is easing the symptoms. Mm-hmm. So I can now walk upstairs at home unaided.
Yeah. Chris, is that a thing, cannabis, for this? Maybe some people, I don't know, are speculating, but there are many things which cannabis can be useful for, whether it be legal or actually more often than not illegal, that does miracles. Is this
I'm actually on the legal, on the government trial, Nicky.
Right. Does that make you stoned? I always get confused.
No, not at all. I'm on a very low dose, which is taken in an oil form, but it has THC in it. Right, THC is the key, isn't it? Yes,
Professor
it is.
Professor Ponting.
So it's great that there is a trial and that it appears to be helpful in this instance. There aren't very many trials like this. It is really saddening to hear from almost everyone that they have to work out for themselves what works for them, because the clinical guidance really is not always very helpful for people. And so they have a long and tortuous route to working out what works best for them. And often it is rest. It is not pushing yourself. And it's going against the guidance that occurred that was in place a long time ago, but thankfully has been rescinded. So it is really sad that everyone has their own personal journey to take, and I can't imagine how lonely that is for each and every one of them.
I've got to say we're overwhelmed. People asking questions, people telling us stuff.
Nicky, could I say something?
I'm not going to stop you. No way.
Thank you. I got some very good advice many years ago, and it's actually from the professor. And how he explained ME at the time was you have like a credit card. And if you spend too much, you go over your limit very quickly. So day-to-day tasks like simply going upstairs, sometimes just going to the bathroom, took a huge amount of your limit out. So you had to just make sure you didn't go over your limit each day, which for a long period of time for me meant I slept for about 20 hours a day, just woke up to eat, go back to sleep. I was very fortunate. I had a very understanding employer who I'd worked for a long time, so they were very supportive, which if I didn't have that, I really don't know where I would have ended up.
08085 909 693. And you can text on 85058. Professor Ponting, can you stay for a bit? Because we knew it would be busy, but a lot of people want to talk and ask questions. I have to go to the news and sport. But I imagine you're quite pressed for time today because you'll be a man in demand. Chris?
Happy to stay with you for a little while longer.
Thank you. We'll take that's brilliant. We'll take the news and sport, and I've got a couple of questions here. We've got more calls. It's 10:34. We're talking about this massive breakthrough in understanding ME, and we got the professor. I'll be back with the professor. And Pippa, I'm sorry to have kept you, but there's been such amazing contributions. I'll be right with you, Pippa Stacey. I just want to, and I'll explain who Pippa is in just a second to everybody else. Just want to read this text, which says, I've pulled over from driving to text in. My wife, at that time girlfriend, was diagnosed with CFS symptoms, chronic fatigue syndrome, but not a clear CFS ME diagnosis while she was in third year at university. She crashed out halfway through third year and moved in with me for 18 months because her parents were entirely unsupportive. She was bedbound for much of it, attempted bursts of work, but crashed soon after starting, and she was without trying to sound unkind, all but no use in daily life. In the following almost 30 years, she's worked in fits and starts, has not been working, more than working, is regularly worn out, sore, and generally exhausted. More recently, she has been associating her ailments to being due to menopause, but I wonder if she's dealing with CFS ME, and that has gone unrecognised, undiagnosed. I'll be speaking to my wife later today about what I've heard on the show. Thank you for this. That's from Bruce in Fife. A lot of people might well be saying similar or feeling similar. Yeah, again, sorry to keep you, Pippa. Pippa Stacey, award-winning blogger, influencer and writer, diagnosed with ME at university. Hi, Pippa. Welcome. That was an interesting text there, wasn't it?
Hi, good morning. Yeah, I've been sat here listening to everybody's stories, and it's just so powerful to know that of this massive proportion of just the UK who has this condition, like behind every statistic, there's an individual story. It just gets you every time, doesn't it?
It really does. And loads of those people are contacting us this morning. It's been like a massive sense of relief for people, because you can, just the fact that you know what's going on in there or why it's going on in there, certainly, Pippa.
For sure. It's such a promising start. I mean, alongside the relief, I'm sure I won't be the only one who's experiencing lots of conflicting emotions as well. Almost this sense of overwhelm of finally having a semblance of an answer and something that provides an explanation after all these years. It's absolutely huge. And yeah, I mean, even today, that news came out yesterday, and I'm sure I won't be the only one who's actually experiencing heightened symptoms today, just because of the impact of the exertion that came from reading that news.
Wow, that's it. Yeah, so because it was such, I don't know, the exertion of reading, but because it was so emotional and so significant and impactful in your life, it kind of took a bit out of you.
For sure. I think it was the adrenaline as well. Just this, oh my goodness, yeah. It's actually happening. Yeah. So today's actually a bit of a tricky symptom day, but obviously wouldn't change it for anything. This is such a huge thing. And just on behalf of everybody with ME, I just want to say a massive thank you to the DecodeME team who've been working on this for so many years now, often under very difficult circumstances. They've had this huge pressure from the community on them. But at every stage of the study, wherever possible, they've consulted with the community, they've valued people's input. And I think that really shows through when you look at the study as a whole and what they'll hopefully go on to do as well. I just think it's so impressive what they've achieved, and I'm just really looking forward to seeing what happens from here.
Following on from what Professor Chris Ponting being mentioned there in Dispatches, what Chris said said earlier on, mainly women calling us this morning. Ellie in Bodmin. Good morning, Ellie.
Good morning. Hi.
Hi. What are your thoughts this morning?
I was listening to your show and I hadn't known about this research, so I feel quite emotional because I'm now 60 and I was diagnosed when I was about 34, 35 by a neurologist, but I never felt believed, and other than this neurologist. And I was told I had depression, so I was given antidepressants. And that's what I believed all this time, is that it's mind over matter. So I've been fighting it for years. 2019, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And because of the pain, I was getting more pain than the fatigue. So it's interesting. I know a caller spoke earlier about that, whether there's a link. And I've been told that there was, but of course there's no research out there that I can see. And I went on to do a degree because I decided that it wasn't going to beat me. And I've always been wanting to achieve. I'm one of those that achieves more than I need to. I'm very fastidious in what I do, and I've been successful with a career in social work. I actually had to retire early because of the fatigue and the pain, it does have an impact on your mental health, because I felt like I'd failed. So a couple of years ago, I went back to work. Well, I've only been back 18 months, but again, I've had to hand my notice in because I'm having more time off than I'm in work because of the fatigue, and you're fine, and then all of a sudden you hit that wall and your limbs are heavy, you can't move, you feel like you've got lead weights, and it's just, for example, I was away last week with my husband with his job, and I've slept all this week. I've not been able to do anything. I've tried to, but I'm out of breath, and loads of that everybody has the symptoms. But the big thing for me when they talk about the genetics was that my mum was like it, and my daughter's like it, and my son also struggles with his fatigue. And I've always had this thing that it's genetic, where everyone's saying, oh, you've had trauma in your life, it's a virus, or you're depressed. And I think that's how I felt emotional this morning, because there is actually something there now that's saying it's genetical.
Professor Chris Ponting. Chris did the research.
Really hit me this morning.
Yeah, you can understand how that really hit Michelle, Chris Ponting, the genetic.
Absolutely. And it does run in families. We have known that for a long time, that if you have ME, it's twice as likely that a close relative or even a third-degree relative has ME. And the genetics findings that we've reported will contribute to that. But there needs to be so much more research. We need to know better why it is that there is a cluster of individuals in the same family. And our research is only the beginning. And if we were to be able to read out the whole genome for families, then we will be able to see far more. I'm sure of it.
Very moving for you today and for so many people. A couple of messages. Thank you for finally something about me on the radio. Cannot thank you enough. This one, I'm listening now in tears. I finally find it wasn't because of my mindset. I did not bring this on myself. It wasn't my fault. I've lived with those thoughts for 30 years. This is what we're talking about. You just heard the man behind the study there, Professor Chris Ponting, the new study from the University of Edinburgh find there are 8 signals in genetic code where people with ME tended to have a different gene variant compared to the healthy population. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning.
It's been very busy this morning, let me tell you that. And listening to what people are saying, you can understand why. What's your situation?
Well, as with everyone, I would echo a massive thank you that, a team has undertaken research that finally gives more voice, more credibility to those who have just really been absent from being heard. I'm a parent to a 15-year-old who at 13 began to exhibit things such as heart palpitations, brain fog, exhaustion, going from being someone who was an early morning person to suddenly sleeping really intensely. And my child is autistic and was very aware of those changes for themselves. And the experiences that we had in presenting to health professionals for a good 5-month period was it's very much anxiety, it's mental health, it's in their brain that I'm not being the best parent I can be by giving any sort of credence to this. And we received advice varying from get a boyfriend. This is from doctors themselves.
Well, a doctor
drink
said
alcohol.
that.
Yes, drink alcohol, go to church. This was the kind of advice we were receiving.
Go to church.
Go to church.
A bit of fellowship, I suppose they're thinking.
Yeah. And this is all in recent times. So to hear people's experiences over decades, I would say very little culturally changed. It really caused my child as an autistic person to have autistic burnout. And that was the one aspect of their experiences that they've had that really need never have happened. And we still continue to build in a lot of recovery with that. Now, based on the experiences they were having, I borrowed some money and we went to a well-recommended private paediatrician who was able to really quite quickly understand what was happening, bring some sort of diagnosis and help us forward. But within, a year and a half to 2 years, this experience has been more evident. My love has gone from being someone who was physically fairly fit to someone who's in a wheelchair at any point to be out of the house now. And that experience of post-exertional malaise is pretty overwhelming. I'm hearing it as being overwhelming for everyone. And as a parent to see your child have such experiences, it brings a lot of loss, a lot of adjustment, and having to keep the focus that that's what your child is experiencing, that loss, that adjustment. And as a parent needing to maintain encouragement, positivity, help them to make sense of not going beyond the walls that they have themselves, their own health batteries, as people refer to, or spoons, as some refer to. It's very, very complex. And I'm really struck by so many people having to figure out their own plans, their own ways, because that support, that cultural approach, that intent is lacking. Now, by chance, occasionally, you'll meet somebody who has a cultural interest, approach, motivation to be centred to the person and to try and help with planning. But mostly, that is absolutely absent. And we've also, you find out then as things develop, you meet other people, you hear other people's stories, but then you start to hear that for adolescents presenting with this matter, it is nearly always attributed to anxiety and mental health. And that's our experience. So to hear this research is here, to hear other people's experiences of that is overwhelming, is positive, and is a beginning, a really, really good beginning.
Well, that's what they're saying it's a beginning. And I'm going to bring Louise in as well. Louise in Cumbria, who has severe ME, took part in the DecodeME study. It's great you've contacted us. I know you're a bit nervous. I've told you you're a bit nervous. Not done this before. But Louise, you are amongst friends, so don't worry about that. This must be a very moving day for you as well, having gone through the research too. What was it like when you actually heard the results?
Well, I was kind of in shock a little bit. A lot of us were bracing ourselves for something kind of being a bit neither here nor there. No disrespect whatsoever to the researchers. We knew they were very much doing their best. But I was kind of numb, just sort of reading everything and just daring to feel a bit of hope for the first time in a while.
Yeah, hope for the first time in a while. It must have been quite a moment.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And once I'd read the results, I was straight on social media seeing, the reaction in the community, which was massive.
It's interesting that quite a lot of people listening to us and who have not come on the radio and some who have didn't know about this research as well. Right. So that's the way the media works. Sometimes something's on the news and you think everybody's seen it or everyone's read about it, but they haven't. So it's. I think it's really good that our producers decided to do this conversation this morning, and I was right behind it. So what's it been like for you then, your life?
Well, I'm sort of fairly new. I've been, I say only been unwell for 3.5 years. It's felt like a very long time to me, but I'm very aware there are people who've been dealing with this life, and calling it a life is a bit of a stretch for someone at my and worse severity levels. People have been basically in their bed for decades with barely any medical support, and that's the thing that people find, I think, hard to believe when we talk about this illness. Unless you're really close to someone who's experienced it or you've been through it yourself, it's almost unimaginable the level of suffering and incapacity that patients have, and yet there's next to no medical support.
Next to none. And did you get a similar kind of reaction to what other people have had? Go for a walk, get a boyfriend, join a church. Did you get any of that stuff?
I've been lucky in a way that my GP, as far as they can be, have been supportive and have, it sounds ridiculous to say, but have believed me. You think you go into the doctor's office, if you say, I'm anxious or I'm depressed, they take your word for it. If you say, I'm having all these physical symptoms, but they haven't got a test for that, then for some strange reason, they don't take your word for it quite as easily, but I've been lucky. And then I think with sort of friends and things, I think I've not had very much overt disbelief, but there's this kind of seed of doubt, I think, that's in a lot of people that, it's difficult to avoid. And a lot of well-meaning people, might offer some sort of holistic, treatment or intervention, because there's this sort of vague concept that it's some sort of imbalance of the humours or something like that, lingering around. But now, I say now we've got this study. There's quite a lot actually. There's quite a lot of stuff out there, and it is growing, but it needs to grow a lot more. And I really do want to take this opportunity to say as well, I don't know if you're aware of the delivery plan that was released recently after quite a lot of delays, that didn't promise any funding, that barely promised anything to support patients on the ground. It barely makes a difference for patients. Even the training that is being put together for medical professionals, which is so important, it's not even going to be mandatory. So at the moment, I say, we really do need hope, but we need more than hope. We need action right now. We need action 10, 20 years ago, so we definitely need it now.
Well, considering you've not done anything like this before, radio-wise, wonderful, wonderful intervention, Louise. And I think you'll want to listen to William in Penryn as well, talking about his daughter. William, it's 5 to 11. I wish we could do this for another hour. I honestly do. What's it been like for you and your daughter?
Hello, talk to me.
Yeah, William. Sorry, I didn't make myself clear.
Oh, hi.
William.
My daughter Alice is 21, and she's been 10 years bedridden in a dark room from post-viral chickenpox, which then moved into severe ME. She's been too ill to go to hospital, where she deteriorated twice. As you know, there's not one NHS hospital bed or ward in this country that is able to treat severe ME. I've come onto a slightly different page. I run a publishing business, and as a businessman, I can't believe that there isn't a sort of curiosity amongst the medical profession to actually deal with this illness. And there are all sorts of reasons for that, which I won't go into. But the complexity of it, shall we just say that I had an idea to raise a lot of money for this. And we need a philanthropist. And we're not just talking about £100,000 here. We're talking about millions of pounds, billions possibly, to actually put research and development and education to cover litigation, to cover intellectual property, to cover all these problems with these multiplicity of illnesses that is associated with ME, from cranial cervical instability, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, fibromyalgia, mast cell activation, POTS, small fiber polynuria, all these that are part of the ME environment. And these patients with their pain and suffering and misunderstanding of what they're going through. If people just said this umbrella of ME and people say just pass aside, but if they really realized what these patients are actually going through and the complexity and the hopelessness that they have, then maybe we would get some help. And so that's what we need. We need some brilliant minds, and we have them in this country. Engineers and people like that, and microbiologists, and they are there. They're out there. Some of them they've just decoded ME, which is brilliant. But we've got to go on from that. And there are people at Stanford and Harvard and Oxford and Melbourne universities who are working on this, but they're short of funds. So if there's anyone out there who's got a bit of money, and that's what we need. And I think the charities have been doing this brilliantly, but they need funding too, and they need support, massive support. So there you go, Nicky.
William, thank you. What I will say is I'm going to go to one of the guys that is at the heart of this, who's been with us for all of this, Professor Chris Ponting, researcher from Edinburgh University behind the study. Look, we have had so many calls and so many texts from people who knew about this and are hugely relieved, who knew about this, read about it, heard about it, who are grateful and incredibly relieved. I think I said that, and moved as well, feeling very emotional today. And we've heard from people who didn't know about it and happened to be listening to the radio and thought, wow. But just there's 20 seconds left, Chris. A lot of people are saying, thank you, Professor Ponting.
Well, thank you to over 20,000 people who gave their energy, their saliva, their trust in us. Without them, we would not have been able to report as we did yesterday.